This morning in Revelation chapter 21, um, we've already had the judgment scene in chapter 20, and we were told in the last verse of chapter 20, if anyone was not found in the book of life, he was cast into the lake of fire. So the tide kind of turns in chapter 21, and we're talking about those that are in the book of life and what they see as the afterlife after the judgment. So in verse 1, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. And the first heavens and the first earth were passed away, and the sea was no longer. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven, made ready, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adorned for her husband. Now, this language is Old Testament language, and I want you to turn back to Isaiah 65. We actually have quite a few Old Testament passages that picture a renewed Jerusalem. And the issue in biblical scholars is which of these passages, or how do I look at these passages? Do I look at them symbolically as referring to God renewing Jerusalem after they came back out of the captivity? Or do I look at them in some futuristic way, referring to the afterlife? And the answer to that is yes. There's a double entendre here, and many of them have sort of a double meaning. But in Isaiah 65:17, you almost have the same wording here. Behold, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come into mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create, for I will create Jerusalem to be a delight and its people a joy. And I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people, and the sound of weeping and of crying will be heard in it no more. So, verse 17 in Isaiah, you have many of the same words here in Revelation 21:1. I saw a new heaven and a new earth. Isaiah 65:17, behold, I will create new heavens and a new earth. And the sea is no longer, he says, and I saw the holy city Jerusalem. So, see, we often say, and this is true for now, when I die, I want to go to heaven. And we will if we die now. But the ultimate destination is this place called New Jerusalem. And if you'll notice, verse 2 says, and I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. So after the judgment, there will be no more heaven like a separate abode for God. The New Jerusalem will come down out of heaven, and God will come down to us, you might say. And so that's why I said on your little cheat sheet there, heaven comes down, because that's the way it describes this city in the Bible in several different places. We have a vision of Jerusalem being renewed. Flip over to Ezekiel for a second. Book of Ezekiel. In the last part of Ezekiel, you have this vision of a renewed Jerusalem. And it sort of starts out here in, excuse me, in chapter 47 of Ezekiel. And in chapter 47, you have this vision of the temple, and out of the temple is flowing this river of water. And it gets bigger and deeper, and as you go further, pick it up at 47:3 there, Caitlin, and read a little ways for us.
And when the man went out to the east with a line in his hand, he measured 1,000 cubits, and he brought me through the waters, and the water came up to my ankles. Again he measured 1,000, and brought me through the waters. The water came up to my knees. Again he measured 1,000 and brought me through, and the water came up to my waist. Again he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not cross, for the water was too deep, water in which one must swim, a river that could not be crossed. He said to me, Son of man, have you seen this?
All right, now stop right there. So picture the temple, and this little trickly stream starts out of the temple, and the further you go, the wider it gets, and the deeper it gets, and the wider it gets, and the deeper it gets, and we've got these little songs, deep and wide, or there's another one or two about the river, and it comes out of this passage in the passage in Revelation about the river of life. But it's coming out from the temple. It's as if it's coming out from the throne of God. We've got an old hymn that it talks about the river that flows from the throne of God. Shall we gather at the river? Talking about this river. Okay. And if you pick it up at verse 6 there, Signe, read starting in verse 6.
He asked me, Son of man, do you see this? Then he led me back to the bank of the river. When I arrived there, I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. He said to me, This water flows from the eastern region and goes down into Arabia.
The Arabah. The Arabah is the very most southern part of Israel where it's just bleak desert. So you've got this river flowing out of Jerusalem, out of the temple, and it's flowing down into the desert that's all dead. If you ever see the Dead Sea area, it is like truly just dead and parched. Yes, ma'am.
Mine says down in the back. It makes you think it'd be green.
Well, no, it's not, because the word in the Hebrew text means it's flowing. See, Jerusalem's in the mountains, and it's flowing downward into the plain, the valley. It's the Jordan Valley, but it's around the Dead Sea, which is like total cracked, dry, nothing desert. Okay, you have to get that to get the image here. So keep going.
Where it enters the sea.
And that's talking about the Dead Sea.
When
Go
it
ahead.
empties into the sea, the water there becomes fresh.
Because see, the Dead Sea is nothing but salt, and nothing can live in it, and it's just ugh. So you're talking about a river that changes everything. Keep going.
Swarms of living creatures will live there wherever the river flows. There will be large numbers of fish because the river flows there and makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En Gedi to En Liam.
All right. En Gedi is a ravine that comes down out of the mountains into the desert. And when you leave En Gedi, it's just dry, dead, cracked desert. But now see, we've got this water coming down and transforming everything.
The fish will be of many kinds, like the fish of the great sea. But the swamps and the marshes will become fresh. They will be left for salt. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both banks of the river. Their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruit fall. Every month they will bear, because the water from the sanctuary flows to them. Their fruit will serve for food, and the leaves for.
So see, if you live in Palestine and you read this, you understand that he's talking about a river that comes from God that transforms everything dead and lifeless into lush, green, fruit-bearing fish all over. Everything is like Garden of Eden, sort of. And so you'll notice in the little picture on the front, in the New Jerusalem, you've got the river flowing out here with the trees on both sides of the river. And if you'll flip over to chapter 22 of Revelation, he's referring to this passage in Ezekiel in the middle of the New Jerusalem. And he says in verse 1, and he showed me a river of the water of life, clear as crystal, flowing out from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the midst of its street and both sides of the river was the tree of life, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, and it keeps on saying, the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Well, that's almost verbatim from Ezekiel 47, verse 12. See, he's picking up that Old Testament vision, and he's saying this is what we're looking at in the place called the New Jerusalem. All right, so the last couple of chapters of Revelation are basically built off of Isaiah 65 and Ezekiel 47 and those other passages I have on the back of your sheet. And it's pictures of the idyllic Jerusalem combined with pictures of the Garden of Eden, sort of. It's like a combination of those two ideas coming together in the place that we're going to be in the afterlife. I didn't put on there, which I should have, write down on the back of your paper if you have a pen, Hebrews chapter 11 through 13, and I'll give you the verses, but let's go over to the book of Hebrews because it talks about this idea of a holy city, Jerusalem, that we're looking forward to. I think this Bible's got Hebrews in it. Some of them, their book's missing, and so they've fallen out. All right, so in Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 10, Shauna, how about reading that one for us? Hebrews 11:10. All right, there's a city that Abraham was looking for, and it's pretty not very clear, ambiguous, a city that has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Look at verse 16 there, Lana, in Hebrews 11.
Desire a better comfort, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them.
Okay, he has prepared a city for them. Well, what city, if you read Revelation? The New Jerusalem. See? Now go over to Hebrews 12. And he's talking to the people like us that have come to the new covenant, to Christ, and he's comparing Mount Sinai in Hebrews 12:18 that was burning with fire and darkness and storm and the trumpet blast and everything they saw at Mount Sinai. In verse 22, he says, but you have come to Mount Zion, to the heavenly Jerusalem, to the city of the living God, and to thousands upon thousands of angels in joyous assembly, etc. So again, to the heavenly Jerusalem. All right, and then go over to Hebrews 13, and let's look down at verse 14. Miss Rita, what does that say? Hebrews 13:14.
For here we have no continuing city, but we seek the one to come.
See, we're looking for a city. What is that city? Well, it's called the New Jerusalem. It's Jerusalem, but it's not the Jerusalem that was destroyed in AD 70. It's not the Jerusalem that I've enjoyed traipsing through a couple times here in Palestine. It's not that Jerusalem. It's another Jerusalem. It's the heavenly Jerusalem. So it's not heaven, but it is the city that is now being prepared in heaven, that will come down out of heaven and join mankind in a place that's called the new heavens and the new earth. Okay.
The paradise.
Paradise what? Well, we're talking location, and I guess it is right now, but what does the word paradise mean? What? Garden. That's correct. So where is the tree of life? Where is the garden right now? I suppose it's in heaven, but it's not going to be. It's going to come down out of heaven.
Jesus said it.
Sure, it's part of what he was talking about. Let's go back to let's go back to Revelation 2:7, I think, maybe. Revelation 2:7. Dana, what does that one say if you find it?
What the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God.
All right, so if we overcome or conquer in our life, we'll get to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. But if you go back to Revelation 22, say when we're in this holy city, New Jerusalem, read Revelation 22, verse 2. Jenny, what does that one say?
Because I don't have a period. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On one side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations.
All right, so there's the tree of life, and it's right there in the middle of the New Jerusalem, which I guess is the same as the paradise of God at this point. Okay, so Jesus told the thief, and he said, "Today you shall be with me in paradise." But see, you've got to give your mind the content of that word. The word means garden. Where was the tree of life in the beginning? In the paradise of Eden, in the Garden of Eden, see? And, Milton wrote a book called Paradise Lost, but the paradise is regained at the end, okay? So you've got these images, Jerusalem, paradise. Go to Galatians chapter 4. You have an allegory here about God's people. Talking about Sarah and Hagar. Go down to, well, let's just pick it up at verse 21, Galatians 4:21. Tell me, you who wish to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it is written that Abraham had two sons, one from the slave woman and one from the free woman. But he who is of the slave woman was born according to the flesh, but he that was of the free woman was born according to promise, which things contain an allegory. For these two, talking about Hagar and Sarah, are two covenants. One from Mount Sinai, born into slavery, which is Hagar. Hagar is Mount Sinai in Arabia. And it corresponds to the present Jerusalem. See, that's the earthly Jerusalem. And she is enslaved with her children. But now look at verse 26. But the Jerusalem that is above is free, which is our mother. Well, see, that's the heavenly Jerusalem. That's the Jerusalem that's going to come down to be our dwelling place in the end, the new Jerusalem. Okay? So it's not like this is in one passage. This is all over. We tend in the churches of Christ to neglect or avoid this terminology a lot of times because the Jehovah's Witnesses use it sometimes. But the fact that they use this terminology doesn't mean it's not biblical terminology. It's just like for years, we didn't want to say grace because the Baptists talked about grace. And so we better not talk about it because they say it, but it's a really good Bible word that we need to use a whole lot. And so we shouldn't be afraid of Bible words because other people use them. All right. So, yes, ma'am.
Stop.
Mhm.
Is that referring to on earth? And could it be possible that paradise is still on earth being guarded by the angels?
I don't think so. God took the tree of life away from them. And wherever the thief went when he died, no, I don't think so, because it says the first heavens and the first earth are passed away. So I don't think so.
So those angels that are guarding it.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. It probably means that at first it was there, but people have been running around and haven't found it. It's in another dimension at least. Yeah. And heaven, where's heaven exactly? It's somewhere where we don't penetrate. It's another dimension.
But the garden was literally.
Yes, it was. And it will be again. Cherubim. But it will be again in the end when it comes down out of heaven. See, it's got to come down out of heaven. So that means that right now it must be in heaven. All right. So let's keep studying this a little bit. If you go back to chapter 21, there's a lot of marriage illustration here. Sort of, the church is God's bride. But if you go to 2 Corinthians 11, keep Revelation 21, but turn to 2 Corinthians 11. 2 Corinthians 11. And about verse 1 and 2. Just read 1 and 2 there. Let's see. Shauna, how about it? All right. I betrothed you to Christ. What does that mean? What's betrothed? No. It means engaged. And so we're not currently married, we're engaged. But at the end, we'll be married. And so in the Revelation passage, he says, Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem comes down out of heaven, prepared like a bride adorned for her husband. See? And I heard a great voice out of the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell among them. And they shall be his people, and he shall be with them and be their God, and he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. And there'll be no death, nor pain, nor crying anymore, because the first things have passed away. Well, so think about this. Oftentimes preachers are preaching and they talk about our conversion and they quote 2 Corinthians 5:17. If any man is in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. But now it's not just the spiritual transformation. The entire universe, the entire earth, the entire system has been reborn. And it's all new, So what we experience as regeneration spiritually anticipates or looks forward to a regeneration of the entire creation. The book of Romans talks about a regenerated creation. And so I need to camp on a particular scripture I'm talking to conceptually, but listen to this scripture. This is Acts 3:19 through 21. You can turn to it if you want to. Acts 3:19 through 21. This is sort of what we're talking about in our lesson today, what Peter was talking about. So he says, repent therefore and turn again. Notice the so that your sins may be blotted out, and there might come times of refreshing from the presence of the Lord, and that he might send forth the Christ who was appointed for you. And now listen to this part, whom the heavens must receive until the times of the restoration of all things that were spoken of by the prophets from of old. Look at that last part. Christ must stay in heaven until the times of the restoration of all things that were spoken of by the prophets. What does it mean to restore everything? To put it back like it was when? At the beginning. See? Notice he says the times of the restoration of all things that were spoken of by the prophets, like Ezekiel, like Isaiah. See, like these people. Does that make sense to you? So what we're reading about in Revelation is the vision of the restoration of those things that was spoken of by the prophets in the Old Testament. All right, so the city of Jerusalem is looked at like a bride that's being presented to God, her husband. And look at verse 5 in Revelation 21. And the one who sits upon the throne said, Behold, I make everything new. And he said, Write, these words are faithful and true. And he said to me, It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. The Omega is the last letter in the Greek alphabet. I'm the beginning and the end. And if to everyone who is thirsty, I will give to drink from the water of life freely. Well, what's this water of life about? What Old Testament book did we read about the water of life that made everything live? Ezekiel chapter 47. And see, that's that river of life that we read about in chapter 21 or 22 that had the tree of life on both banks and that bore fruit every month, and the leaves were for the healing of the nations. So God's going to give everybody the water of life. They're going to be restored. See, that's the idea. I just take it, if it goes back to Ezekiel 47:12, it says the bears fruit every month and the leaves of the trees are for healing. Is it aloe vera? I have no idea. Yeah, the nations would be all the people from different nations that come to the Lord, come to Christ, and they're all going to be in this new Jerusalem. So, yeah. This is a fascinating passage because there's so much in the Old Testament that comes together here in this passage. Notice that it says in verse 7, like the letters in the chapters 2 and 3, he that overcomes shall inherit these things, and I shall be his God and be with him, and he shall be my son. But as for the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and fornicators and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, they shall have their part in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So he's giving you this beautiful picture of the New Jerusalem and paradise, and he's contrasting it with the end of chapter 20, where it says, if anyone was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. And he's giving us the choices of an afterlife. See, one of the very foundational New Testament teachings that is the core of our faith is that there is an afterlife, and that this life is not all that there is, and that we'll be spending our eternity someplace, one place or another, and it motivates us to do good now. This life is not all there is. So then in verse 9, he says, and there came to me one of the seven angels having the seven vials full of the seven last plagues. And he spoke with me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. And he brought me forth in the spirit unto a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God. See, this is the bride, the wife of the Lamb with God's people in it. See, it has the glory of God. And pick it up at verse 11 there and read a little bit, Jenny, for me. Verse 11.
It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal. It had a great high wall with 12 gates, and with 12 angels at the gates. On the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel.
Do you see some 12s in there? There's 12s. All right, keep going.
There were 3 gates on the east, 3 gates on the north, 3 gates on the south, and 3 on the west. The wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb.
All right, that's a lot of 12s in there, isn't it? And if we keep reading there at verse 15. Pick it up at 15 there, Signe.
Measure the city, its gates, and its walls. The city was laid out like a square, as long as it was wide. He measured the city with the rod and found it to be 12,000 stadia in length, and as wide and high as it is long. He measured its walls, and it was 144 cubits thick by man's measurement, which the angel was using.
You got a 12,000, you got 144. That's about as 12 as you can get, isn't it? Remember when we had the 144,000 people back up and we talked about 12s and everything? And that woman in chapter 12 that bore the man-child that was Jesus, she had a crown of 12 stars, and there were 24 elders. And see, if I could do my 12s, I learned my 12s somewhere way back there, and I've got most of them still in here. Yeah. Okay, 9 times 12 is 108. Is that right? Okay, anyway. Okay, so we've got 12s. But you have this description, and the description is weird because, like, if you look at the picture on the front, the city is like a cube. And it has 3 gates on either side, 12 gates, 12 angels, names of the 12 apostles and the 12 tribes of Israel. And do we take all this literally? I have no idea, because so many of these numbers throughout the book are not literal, but he's telling you this is God's city, and this is God's things, and this is God's people, and everything is perfectly symmetrical, and everything is just like it's supposed to be, and it's hard to imagine such a city, literally, but who knows? I mean, it's made up of a lot of Old Testament scriptures. It's like a quilt, and somebody has taken a bunch of the prophetic scriptures about the end times and sewed them together in this passage to describe the place that we're going. And pick it up at verse 22 there, Lana, and read 22 through 27. 21, 22.
For the living God, the Almighty, the Lamb are its temple. And the city has no need of sun or of the moon to shine upon it, for the glory of God has illuminated it, and its lamp is the Lamb. And the nations shall walk by its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory into it. And in the daytime, for there shall be no night there, its gates will never be closed. And they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. And nothing unclean, and no one who practices abomination and lying shall ever come into it, but only those whose names are written in the Lamb.
All right, now let's go back in the book of Isaiah to Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah chapter 60. And Isaiah 60 is talking about the glory of Zion. Zion is another name for Jerusalem, right? And so go down to Isaiah 60, verse 11. Your gates will always stand open. They will never be shut day or night, that men may bring you the wealth of the nations, their kings led in triumphal procession. Well, that's just what Lana just read over there in the book of Revelation. Go down to, let's see here, verse 18. No longer will violence be heard in your land, nor ruin or destruction within your borders. You will call your walls salvation and your gates praise. The sun will be no more your light by day, nor will the brightness of the moon shine on you. The Lord will be your everlasting light. Your God will be your glory. Your sun will never set again. Your moon will wane no more. The Lord will be your everlasting light, and your days of sorrow will end. Well, very, very similar to what Lana just read, right? All right, so you see what I'm talking about. You've got these visions, and see, here's Isaiah 60, and it's talking about Jerusalem. Then you get over there to Isaiah 65, where I took you first, verse 17. I'm going to create new heavens and new earth, and I'm going to create a new Jerusalem. But all this is about a new Jerusalem. The times of the restoration of all things that were spoken of by the prophets from of old. Remember Acts 3:19 that I showed you? That's the idea in all of this. Whose kid is that right there? Who kidded that? It's a cute kid. That's all I got to say. All right. So,
People, I'm not gonna be sad if somebody's not there who didn't make it there.
yeah, that's something that we can't fathom now. And somehow God's going to make that okay. How God's going to make that okay, I don't know. But somehow that will be okay. There will be a satisfaction that all is as it should be. And we can't grasp that here because we're here with all of our pain and all of our worries and all of our concerns, and all of our sadness, which will not be there. There'll be no pain or crying or now, God, how are you going to accomplish that? Trust me, he says, I'll accomplish it.
Who is that? Like when David lost his son and said, I'll see him. I mean, is that true?
Yeah, well, the rich man and Lazarus, they were aware, but and the rich man in torment was aware that his brothers were headed where he is, back on earth. He could also see Lazarus, and the Bible does seem to indicate that the people in torment may have these sorrows and misgivings about where they are and if their families, but it doesn't ever indicate that the people on the other side will feel that way.
So like right now we have heaven, earth, and hell. We die, go to heaven or hell. When the New Jerusalem comes down, is there no more heaven?
The first heavens and the first earth, yeah, there's no more heaven because God comes down to man.
It's just going to be the New Jerusalem on earth and heaven.
The new earth, yeah. And so while we're in Isaiah real quickly, let me see what time it is. Yeah, we still got a couple minutes. Let's go to Isaiah 62. This is a passage that I think has been misused by a lot of people. It's talking about Jerusalem again. Start with verse 2. He says, the nations will see your righteousness and all the kings your glory. You, and that's talking about Jerusalem, will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. Well, preachers, some preachers still, but old preachers used to say that new name is Christian. No, it's not, because if you keep reading, which is a good thing to do, you will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the hand of God. That no longer will they call you deserted or name your land desolate. Here's our new name now. but you will be called, my delight is in her, in Hebrew, Hephzibah. And your land will be called Beulah, which means married. Married. See, remember in Revelation, it comes down as a bride prepared for her husband. So Beulah, married, Hephzibah, my delight is in her. That's the new name. See, God's going to delight in his people. There's no more sin. There's no more pain. There's no more crying. He's going to be right there with us, like he was right there with him in the Garden of Eden. You know, this is the new name. So look at the end of verse 5 or 4 there. It says, for the Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married. As a young man marries a maiden, so will your sons marry you. As a bridegroom rejoices over his bride, so will your God rejoice over you. And that's exactly the picture we see in Revelation chapter 21. Okay, so when you're reading Revelation, if you're reading Revelation without any familiarity with the Old Testament, you're at a disadvantage, because the book of Revelation is just chock full of stuff from the Old Testament. Okay? We could go whole lots of other directions here, but that's probably enough for, yeah, go ahead.
People who have near-death experiences and see the light, and that you can, people who
I don't deny that they have them. I have no idea what they all mean. I just hate to speculate on stuff I don't know anything about. So yeah, I've heard a lot of those things. What's Stephen saw Christ standing there in heaven, and a lot of people say they see their loved ones, and now whether that's a function of the brain picking out memories or whether that's something else, I do not know. Guess we'll have to wait and find out. Hopefully it won't be this week, but it could be. But hope,